Hello and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. Today, joining me, he is guzzling his coffee. He is the host of Confederacy of Dunks. He's my co-host on the Pickup WNBA pod and all around my good friend. It's Freddie Rivas. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm pumped to be, on your show, and it's a really interesting time in the NBA and for the Raptors. So thanks for having me.
Well, my pleasure. Anytime. We released an episode today, but by the time this comes out, it'll be yesterday, of the Pickup WNBA pod. So much happening in the WNBA right now. We had the huge blockbuster trade of Jonquel Jones going to the Liberty. We have Breanna Stewart's cryptic tweets.
Yep.
We have her tweeting about what she's willing to give up financially so the W can fly chartered flights. We talked about the game coming to Toronto. So if you're interested or even just a bit curious about the WNBA, check out our pod. We are very, I like to say we are a welcoming of new WNBA fans. Mm-hmm. So you definitely don't need to be a seasoned fan to get our podcast. We know there's a growing interest, especially here in Toronto, but just a growing interest all around in the league. And we really do our best to cater to that.
Yeah. And, there's never been a better time to get into the W. Like it's just exploding in so many ways. And it's fantastic basketball. And support women's sports and get into the WNBA. It's fun and easy.
Nice. Okay, cool. Let's get into some NBA topics. We always do NBA before we do Raptors. We're going to get into all of it. First of all, let's talk about these new All-Star rules. So they're announcing the starters later tonight. We're recording this Thursday, the 26th in the afternoon. So we won't know the starters until after this episode's released. But what they have done is they've decided not to actually draft the teams until All-Star game itself. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, this is something that they've been, I feel like this is, you know how Adam Silver has his play-in tournament that he's like obsessed with? The obsession with having the players pick the teams and sort of the like last pick feeling shame is a huge thing that like, it's not necessarily my bag, but I'm fascinated by it because I feel like the All-Star game is just desperate to recreate this pickup vibe.
Well, the only time I ever really see it is on Drag Race, like on RuPaul's Drag Race. Like They always do that for challenges where like they make the queens like pick whoever they want on their team. And then there's always someone that's like, I got picked last, but I'll show them, it's so cliche. It's so like reality TV cliche.
It's like manufactured motivation,
Yeah. I mean, to me, I feel like the perks of being an adult is that you don't have to do this anymore.
Oh yeah. Furthermore, the perks of being a rich NBA All-Star
should be not to have to go through this anymore.
You know what I mean? So yeah, exactly. And
I imagine like for these guys, all their lives, they've been picked first, really. I mean, they're NBA All-Stars. They've never not been picked first. This will be their first time experiencing not being picked first. And it's happening in front of millions of people.
I will say the amount of like James Harden shade that this is produced is pretty funny. Like every year there's some weird way that
James Harden gets picked last.
Yeah, or they'll throw some shade at him in some different way. Like he definitely, I feel like, is the biggest victim of like shade and shaming and getting ripped on in this process. Like people love to take digs at James.
Yeah. I feel like I don't. Well, I remember when Kevin Durant was doing the draft in particular last year, James Harden had just left the Brooklyn Nets to Philadelphia. So he did not want to pick James Harden.
And I think LeBron.
Well, but I think LeBron was trolling Kevin Durant on purpose. Like, I think he was purposely like, not that he wanted James Harden first otherwise or anything, but he was kind of deliberately leaving him to the end to like make Durant pick him, and then he picked Rudy Gobert over him, who was typically last otherwise. I mean, I don't think Rudy Gobert is going to make the All-Star necessarily this year, but yeah, so now with Giannis there, right? Because it's LeBron and Giannis, I believe, that are going to be the team captains.
Yeah, it's usually the lead vote getters. And is it LeBron and Giannis?
I think so. Oh God, I hope I'm not wrong about that. But in any case, I think that will lead to a different dynamic.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just curious about Giannis too, because I wonder if it's just from a voting perspective. I wonder if it's Durant, because Durant seems like he would be the guy. But I hope it's Giannis. I feel like Giannis always brings that like innocent.
Team captain's probably LeBron James, and either Giannis or Kevin Durant will make.
Oh, okay, so it's tight enough that it's not decided. Probably
it hasn't been decided. Sorry, my bad. I thought it had been decided. But the thing too is that Durant's injured. Well, they're both injured right now.
Yeah, but I think
who knows?
I think Durant's more seriously injured, so we'll see. Although I did just see a thing that Durant says he wants to be there and he wants to participate. So I feel like he is, can probably play in an All-Star game, but maybe can't, go hard enough for the regular season right now. So I think he'll be there. It seems like it.
Well, and he hasn't been at an All-Star game in a very long time.
Totally.
I think it's been since maybe 2019, because I mean, in 2020, he was injured. 2021, he was still injured. 2022, new injury. So he's been injured all these years at that time. So I think for him, it is a very big deal to be able to be there. And I wouldn't be surprised. And I do think, narrative speaking, it is more fun for it to be him. Although I won't be, I don't know, he'll probably pick Kyrie and then I probably won't cheer for his team. But anyway, that's just me. Yeah. But in any case, yeah, I feel like the whole point of being an adult is that you don't have to go through this. But the NBA loves drama and the NBA loves being petty. So it's almost shocking that they haven't done this sooner. But, give them some credit for figuring out a way to raise the stakes for All-Star. I'm going to be super curious how it goes. I also think there are certain players, some players aren't going to care if they're picked last, but I think there are certain players, if they're picked last, they are never going to pass the ball, and they're going to go for MVP just because they were picked last. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think the NBA does their best to try to sort of coax out the ultra competitor. And I feel like the fact that they're all going to learn like what teams they're on sort of right before it happens, I assume there's going to be cameras on every player. So you're going to, it's going to take a lot of poker face rehearsal to make sure you actually, you look like you don't care. And I feel like we will see people get mad, which is fun.
Yeah, like for example, like if Trae Young gets picked last, we're going to know how he feels.
Yes, definitely. And
he's definitely going to just jack up every shot he can with whatever time he has on the court. And he's like going to try, same with there's certain fringe players. Like Damian Lillard just scored 60 points last night. He's had multiple 50 points game. I think he's trying to make a late All-Star push for himself. And, he's Damian Lillard. So why not? If he's in the game and he gets picked last, I feel like he's going to go off. You know what I mean? Like there's just certain people, but then there's other people too, where like if James Harden gets picked last, I don't think he's going to care. I think he'll be like, whatever. He's here. He's like, I'm just here to party.
Yeah, definitely. James Harden is the one guy who's like, honestly, ask me if I care.
Yeah.
Like he's at the point where he's just like, I've been ridiculed for a long time. We're good.
Yeah. He's like, I'm just happy I'm 5 pounds less than I was last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever,
I could see someone like Joel Embiid really caring.
Oh, he'll care. But he won't get picked last.
He won't. But
that would be so funny if they thought to troll him, because he is very emotional in a very, dare I say, immature way.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, he literally. I feel bad saying it, but it's true. It really is true.
In that Brooklyn Philly game, Durant like tweeted at him like trash celebration because he literally did the suck it thing. It's like
I've heard
from
about
the 90s. Like doing a like suck it DX from I don't know, I'm sure you didn't watch wrestling growing up, but there was a Degeneration X for anyone listening.
But I definitely remember the gesture.
Doing the suck it thing. I'm like, buddy, that's from such a long time ago.
I remember like people like in elementary school doing it. And
yes, exactly.
I don't think anyone knew what it really meant. Like, I think they just thought it was funny, you know? Like,
I mean, it is funny, but it's also like, there's a lameness and an immaturity to it, you know? Like,
well, and also too, like, so Steph Curry gets ejected last night because he tossed his mouth guard, and you can't toss things. But then like Joel Embiid can do like the suck it gesture, and it's whatever, you know? It's bizarre.
Figure it out, bro.
Yeah, you got to figure that out after, you know, thank you for the pickup style, whatever, but you got to figure that out.
Also, let me say,
weird.
No more half measures. Okay, if you're gonna do this, you want to embarrass people. I want to see everyone in a dunk tank, and if you get picked last, you're dunked
in a dunk tank.
That's right. Like you get soaked.
So every single NBA player,
individual
that's in
dunk
the All-Star, they're individual dunk tanks.
That's right.
And then there's people there simultaneously ready to dunk them.
That's right.
So wait, each time they don't get picked, they get dunked. So they get dunked over and over and over.
Okay, that's even better than my idea. I was thinking that if you don't get picked last, you take a ladder down and you're dry or whatever. But yours is way better. Starting from like all whatever, like 16 guys, they all get dunked. So they just get soaked over and over and over again. And
then you have to play basketball.
Yeah, then you got to get up, dry them off,
towel off.
Yeah, let's make this a 9-hour event. Honestly, the NBA, no more half measures, okay?
That is easily one of our stupidest ideas.
Yeah, this is good.
That is.
Yeah.
Wait, your idea involved a ladder?
Like however you get down from a dunk tank without getting soaked. I don't know how you do that, but I assume steps, a ladder. I don't know enough about dunk tanks. So I just
maybe the new dunk contest is just dunk tanks.
There you go. We found
that's how we revive the dunk contest.
Yeah.
If you miss your dunk, getting tanked.
That's right. There's a pool under the yeah, that's good. There's a pool. Jordan Poole is the lifeguard, and there's a pool. Yeah, there you go.
Did you see that there's a lookalike of Jordan Poole named Jordan Puddle?
I did not, but cheers to that name.
That is
That's
good.
A wonderful name.
He changed his name on Twitter to Jordan Puddle.
Good for him.
And he does look like he looks like Jordan Poole's like dad or uncle or something. You know,
that guy needs a Venmo, and that guy needs to get rich.
Yeah, I hope he does. I hope he does. Wow, well, we got really off the rails here, but that's fine. Okay, here's another topic that's going to also get us like totally off the rails. It went viral this week. This kid went to a Miami Heat game with a sign that's saying he flew X number of miles to see Jimmy Butler at a game. And an hour before the game started, he was ruled out. And, you know, went viral because you see the kid's disappointing face. I mean, it reminds me of The Simpsons when Bart's sitting with Lisa and they're like trying to figure out exactly the point where Ralph's heart gets broken.
Yes.
The Choo Choo Choose Me episode.
Yeah,
anyway, It reminded me of that because you could really pinpoint that to the exact moment. You know, and obviously this has sparked a lot of dialogue about load management, sitting star players on back-to-backs, etc., how much it hurts the product, how much it hurts the fans.
Yep.
But get this. So I was listening to the No Dunks guys earlier today. Shout out to them. Jerome, specifically of No Dunks, he's like one of their social media producers. I don't know his exact title, but he's a great follow on social media. Anyway, he found out, he did some deep diving into the dunk pool. Sorry, he did some deep diving and found out that this kid, you know, he had this sign being like, Jimmy Butler's my favorite player. also went to a Golden State Warriors game with a similar sign being like, Steph Curry is my favorite. I flew X number of miles.
I knew it.
To see Steph Curry. So it's a bit of a stunt. It's not his first time doing this. So maybe we shouldn't feel so bad for this particular kid. But, you know, because this kid's family's obviously rich enough to fly to different games. I mean, I didn't grow up with that kind of wealth, but, you know, I do think there is something to be said for people who travel for these games. Then you find out an hour later, they're just being like, they're not injured, but they're just being ruled out. But anyway, this kid with the stunt, wild.
Okay. We were just talking about it before the podcast. I'm a nice guy. We were actually talking about how nice of a guy. I guess nice guys don't say that, but
no, not typically.
In general, I feel like I am generally nice. People, you know, say I'm positive, etc. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. And I'm glad you said it, because this kid has rich kid vibes.
Major.
I grew up poor, and I know a rich kid when I see one. And I don't care about this kid. Like, I don't think he's a bad person, but I don't give a rat's ass. I'm not lying. It's like, oh, you traveled to see Butler? No, you traveled to see the Miami Heat. You traveled to see an NBA game, and you had great seats. And if you were in the 300s, no one would have seen your poster.
Yeah. Like,
okay? So listen, like, it's a funny moment. It's not a sad moment to me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm sure that kid has really nice shoes. And also all the follow-up stuff, like he got to meet people, he got to go on the court. Like he got
I didn't get a close-up of the shoes, but
sorry,
he is wearing a jersey though.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, I'm sure he's a really, like, you know, whatever. Like, I'm not here to attack a kid, but like, maybe I am.
You're here to eat the rich though, in general.
Yes, I am. And I think that, you know, in a much more like serious, like non-going viral thing, I do think that there's a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of, there's an unfair expectation with this sentiment. And that's why I said you're there to see the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. You're not there to see Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler. When you bought your ticket, it didn't say Jimmy Butler versus Jason Tatum. All those NBA players, guess what? Peyton Pritchard, worth the money. You know what I mean? Like Tyler Hero, worth the money. The NBA is the most elite league in the world, and players resting is, of course, a complicated problem. But this sentiment that, you know, I went there to see LeBron James or Steph Curry or whomever is I think it's fraught with entitlement.
I love all of that. I mean, first of all, you know, you and I have both talked about, not necessarily before this podcast, but both have talked about growing up poor and not having a lot. I could not have dreamed of flying to a game as a young person with a jersey, you know, being lower bowl. I mean, I think we went to shout out to the Sprite Zone for those who remember.
Shout out to the Sprite Zone, exactly.
I think we went to the Sprite Zone once a year.
Yeah.
And that was a really big deal for us personally. Yeah. And I think one year when the Raptors in the Vince Carter days, when we were in the second round against Philadelphia, my mom and I went again. So I think that was the only year we went like twice.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that was still a Sprite Zone situation, and there were some drunk guys sitting next to us. I remember this very well. But then they thought, like, my mom and me being like a little kid, like they thought it was cute that their mom would bring like their daughter to like a playoff game. So they were like incredibly nice to my mom, even though they were like drunk off their face. So it was always good vibes in the Sprite Zone. Yeah.
Oh, Sprite Zone was the best vibes, man. Like, you know, when
it didn't make sense to be upper bowl and not in the Sprite Zone, honestly. Like, it was such a party. It was like, we're broke and we're here. Like, you know.
Oh my God. Like, I have so many. One of my first Raptors games I can remember, I went with my brothers. It was against the Miami Heat. there's a player named Doliak, and we were chanting Doliak for like a bunch of the game. And these people came over to our section and they're like, sorry, are you guys chanting Gloria? And we're like, no, we're chanting Doliak. And they're like, okay. And they didn't understand why we were yelling at like a bench player. But to me, that's sort of the spirit of
it makes more sense than Gloria.
I know. Yeah. Every time I tell that story, I'm like, wait a second, this is kind of anticlimactic because the Gloria thing doesn't make sense. But the larger point of what I'm trying to say.
Every time you tell this story.
I tell it a lot every day, baby. If you meet me, you're going to hear the Doliak Gloria story. But, it's like, I think it's gotten a bit out of hand, right?
Your overall point about this getting out of hand and entitlement, I completely agree with you.
And I get that load management is frustrating, et cetera, et cetera. I really want to write a piece on this because there's too much inconsistency with it. And I don't know how so much of this is put on NBA players when you have MLB pitchers play once a week. The NHL, no one expects the goalie to play the entire season. Professional soccer, you're not going to get Messi and Ronaldo for every single game. Like they play the big games, and that's I think the NBA is the most elite team sport in the world. There's like less than 500 players, and even less players that actually play meaningful minutes. So you're watching quality players and quality basketball, and there's only 15 superstar combo guys. So I think it's not really fair, and of course, if I'm going to a Raptors Nuggets game, I want to see Jokic. Of course I want to see Jokic, but if Jokic has a sore knee and they want to win the championship that year, then too bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's legit. I do think it depends on the market too, but I think in the Toronto market, tickets are too much money.
Yes.
And I do think that's a problem because
major problem.
If you're spending, it feels like minimum $200 at this point.
Totally.
And then within an hour before tip off, you decide someone's just going to rest. I don't really love that. I do think there should just be a bit more transparency.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly how to do this because on one hand, you can't just say okay, we're going to look at the calendar back to backs. This person isn't going to play. I do think you can do that with someone maybe like a Kawhi Leonard, but someone like Jimmy Butler, who is trying to play the whole season or as much of it as they can, you do kind of have to feel it out as you go. So
yeah, you're dealing with physical bodies.
Yeah.
So you can plan as much as you want. This is a Curry Durant matchup. But
I think if you as a consumer are buying tickets to see a game and you look at the calendar and there is a back-to-back situation, I think just as a savvy fan,
mm-hmm.
know that there's a risk that maybe your favorite players aren't going to play, and just look for the games that aren't back-to-backs, honestly. Yeah.
And I mean, players are playing longer than they've ever played. The game of basketball is really intense. So it's a big expectation to assume that every star is going to play every game.
Yeah. Freddie, have you ever taken a strange or funny sign to a game?
Good question. I don't think I've ever taken a funny sign to a basketball game, but one time I went with my older brother to a WWF. It was a or WWF at the time. It's now WWE wrestling event, and he had exams the next day, and we wrote on the sign that we're studying for our high school exams. But instead of studying, we came to this wrestling event, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
But again, we weren't sitting close enough for anyone to read that shit.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
The
That's
people
funny.
who read that were in the rows in front of us, and they were like, "Oh, those kids are funny." Anyways, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I once as a kid took a funny sign to a Raptors game. And this is like, Backstreet Boys and Sync, Vince Carter for me, all the rage. And I took a sign, again, not sitting close enough for anyone to see, but it said Vince take it to the playoffs, but I color coded the letters so it also said Vince take it off.
Huge. Double meaning.
So
huge.
Inappropriate.
That's great.
As very much an underage child.
Yeah.
So inappropriate. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, ah, you know what I mean?
You killed it. I'm proud of you.
I was just like, like you see that old footage of like the Beatles on like the Ed Sullivan show and everyone's just like losing their mind. That's just how I was at that age. That's just how girls are at that age. It's just like everything is crazy.
It was like Beatles mania, but for Vince.
That's literally what it was. And then all these years later, I'm podcasting, But anyway, that was my one time experience with a funny sign. I went with my friend Holly at the time. Shout out to Holly.
What's up, Holly?
I've actually bumped into Holly a few times in more recent years at stand-up shows, which was really nice.
Nice.
But yeah, just very fun, very crazy. I never did it again. That was a one-time thing. It was just at that age. I think maybe even a year later, I was like, wow, that was weird.
Yeah. Bringing a sign's a lot. I appreciate the people that do, but it's a lot to carry, Like,
it's a lot. But when you're a kid, you don't really care, You're just like, whatever. But yeah, it was a lot. Okay, let's move on. We had a trade this week. Rui Hachimura went to the Lakers for Kendrick Nunn, and I think some picks are involved in that trade too.
Yeah, some second rounders.
They didn't trade away their coveted 2027 to 2029 first round picks, which everyone just won't shut up about for some reason. Like, it's so crazy. I feel like as a Raptors fan that I know what the Lakers pick situation is so well, because I just think the national media talks about it a lot. But in any case, they made this trade. I have some thoughts, but Freddie, what do you think of it?
Well, yeah, my original thought was sort of, I think, I was seeing a lot of the same sentiment, but why Rui? When we know that LeBron and Anthony Davis need more shooters around them. But I think I've softened on that a little bit just because Rui's, he's not. I guess it's not that big of a like game sample or whatever, but I think it's like 356 or something like that. Career average from three. Last year in a fairly small sample, he shot like 40 some odd % from three. So you would imagine that playing with Davis and with LeBron, he's going to get a lot of more open shots than he was in Washington. So, yeah, I'm in the category that I think the Lakers, you don't want to waste any of LeBron's time. Davis and Hachimura both played last night. And yeah, I think this is also, I would assume, those coveted picks you're talking about are going to come into play, right? So this is a move that's happening before bigger moves, I would assume. And I think I like it for the Lakers, to be honest. For the Wizards, it's yet another guy that they drafted high that they've punted on. So
yeah,
I'm not sure what to say about the Wizards. It's like, yeah, for the tankers of the world, I mean, the Wizards there's many Hornets and Wizards franchises who I think should make you think twice about just being in the kind of perpetuity of drafting and developing guys and not committing to those guys and then punting on those guys. So yeah, I mean, if I'm a Wizards fan, I'm like, great, same as it ever was. If I'm a Lakers fan, I'm like, whatever, you're swinging, right?
Yeah, I find this trade scenario a little baffling in that, on one hand, just exactly like you said with the Wizards, it's like they're giving up on yet another draft pick, which the whole point of tanking is to draft well and develop those players and not
Yeah.
give up on them. So, and also, too, like, I feel like they came into this year hoping they could at least make the play in. Like, I think they had some kind of winning expectations for
Mm-hmm.
themselves this year. They are currently in the mix.
Yep.
It's a strange move if you're the Wizards, for sure. And then from the Lakers' perspective, I find it strange only in that the Lakers aren't exactly known for developing players. And this is someone who's looking for, some sort of revival. Like, I'm not going to say his career is like tanked or anything, but he's looking to be revived a bit here. And I don't know why the Lakers see themselves as the ones to do that. Like, for example, like the Raptors, although this year's been clunky, do have a reputation of being able to develop players and get players from good to great.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we drafted them like Fred VanVleet or Siakam, or whether we traded for them like Kyle Lowry. You know what I mean? Like, we have a reputation for being able to do that. I feel like, not that I'm saying I wanted Rui Hachimura per se, but I just feel like a team like that would have made more sense for him than the Lakers, where you're going into immediate, way too high expectations, going from almost no spotlight to massive spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're probably, he's a power forward, but I do think, like, maybe they're looking for someone a bit more reliable for when Anthony Davis can't play. Maybe that's what it is, but it's just, I don't know how or why they are going to be the team to give his career a fresher start, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I feel like he's having only 30 games, to take from this season, but he's having like a decent season. I'm just looking at it now: 13 points a game, 4 rebounds, 1 assist. Like, that's not a lot, but his like effective field goal percentage is .536. His 3-point percentage is 33. Like, he's fine. He's not a game changer. So if you're the Lakers, maybe part of this is more so that you wanted to get rid of none. Like, maybe that's what it's about. Like, is he a better player than Kendrick Nunn? Probably. So
probably, at least for their team.
Minor upgrade. And the Lakers they're very much in it, right? The West is a lot of losing records in the West. So the Lakers are very much in the play-in mix, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Freddie, let's move on to some Raptors talk. We're coming off of a great win against the Sacramento Kings, probably one of our better wins of the season so far.
Great game.
Yeah, absolutely. But that does not, I'm going to phrase this in a very dramatic way. That does not stop the vultures from flying around us.
No.
You know what I mean? And there's been a lot of press this week. There was a podcast. Wait, I need to pull this up. Sorry. I have so many tabs open. It's a bit maddening. Radio personality Bob McCowan shared on his podcast. He said, quote, "I talked to an insider in the NBA yesterday on the phone. He tells me that Anunoby wants out of Toronto." And so now this is the second time we're dealing with rumors about Anunoby not being happy here and wanting out. What do you think, Freddie?
Yeah, so this is interesting to me in a bunch of ways. I feel like, just to address the vultures flying around thing, whether you are, pro tank or anti tank, I think that there's a lot of talent on this roster that the rest of the league, rightfully so, is interested in. There's a lot of players that would, not necessarily complete a team, but interest in OG makes perfect sense. He's a fantastic player. He's so well-rounded. He's the 3-and-D guy that would complete a lot of lineups and push a lot of teams over the edge. Now, with Bob McCowan, he wouldn't be necessarily someone I would lean on as like, this guy is tapped in to
Right.
the Raptors. He's sort of a baseball guy and other sports as well, but I can't remember a time where he's broken news about the Raptors where I've been like, wow, like Bob McCown had the scoop.
Right.
But
Let's just drag Bob McCown.
I know, right? I do think, well, I'll say this about Bob McCown. My little brother used to do like landscaping. And he worked on Bob McCown's garden and like lawn a bunch. And he said Bob McCown was super nice.
Oh, wow.
So, shout out to Bob McCown being nice to landscapers. I'm down with that.
Cool.
But, yeah,
maybe that was the insider. He's also done landscaping.
Yeah, it's my little brother. But shout out Thomas.
Yeah, shout out to Thomas.
But yeah, it's not the first time. So I think that you can't ignore something when it keeps popping up. Even if I put myself in the camp of kind of like the Raptors don't leak under Masai generally. Or I don't have a lot of references for when the Raptors, when info has come out and it's been like the Raptors have leaked it, then it's been true. So that's usually my first kind of lens I take any of these rumors through, is that it's probably not coming from the Raptors. It's probably coming from someone who wants OG versus, like the call is coming from it's not coming from inside the house, That said, it's been fairly consistent. And there was like a role thing. Nurse did address it in the summer. He said he talked with OG and that he feels like this is an equal opportunity team. You can grab a rebound. You can take it to, you can like run your own play. Like you can go for it. Like that's how this equal opportunity Raptors team works. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm like all the way on the side of like, there's smoke, there's fire. I think that it is interesting that we've heard it twice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my personal theory, and again, this is just a theory, is that, OG Anunoby is a clutch sports guy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it could be from them, whether or not, OG is like happy or not happy. I think they want to see him in a more winning situation. That's just my personal theory. I have no...
Sure. Yeah, why not?
But I also too, like, I agree with you in terms of the leaks. Like in the Tampa season when we were not doing well and everyone was talking about Kyle getting traded leading up to the trade deadline, to the point where he did like, the deuces on the way out of his last game before the trade deadline. And then it ended up being Norm getting traded for Gary Trent Jr. instead of Kyle. So it's like the noise is not always accurate. I do think, oh my God, my phone. I'm so sorry. I do think the Raptors are going to make a move. I think that's pretty obvious, but that's just because of looking at the team. That's not necessarily because of like actual reports. Like I think you look at this team and you go, okay, they're going to make a move here, right? Agree. Like this roster just isn't a perfect fit, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to tank or we're going to do some sort of blockbuster trade or like any of those things. And to your point too about like it makes sense that everybody wants OG Anunoby. I think every other team in the league wants our team. Frankly, or individuals on our team. Like there's nobody on our team. We have a lot of good players that the rest of the league doesn't want, I mean, it's just so it's just one of those things where like as a Raptors fan, it's frustrating. We know that it's very likely a move is going to be made. So I think there's a lot of anticipation right around this. And then, if I'm using the vultures analogy again, it's just swarming more and more and more as we lead up to this deadline. And it's probably hard for the players. Like, honestly, like if I were an NBA player, that's such a funny sentence for me to say, but if I were an NBA player, I would not be on social media of any kind. I think it would be impossible.
It would be stressful.
It would be so stressful. Like, I just don't even know how I could do it. But yeah, I think it will be very interesting. Like if OG does get dealt at this deadline, then I think we could say that these rumors or leaks are likely true.
Right, sure.
That he is unhappy, but he's not the kind of guy to let that out. We haven't heard anyone else say it that's like remotely close to the Raptors. So that's why I think more and more this is like a clutch sports thing. They need to keep his profile up. they need to keep the idea that everybody wants him because he's great up, because that helps his value overall, whether he's
For
dealt
sure.
or not.
And I think you bringing up the Kyle Tampa season stuff is really key, because I've been harping on that for a long time, and I think that is our, like, from a proximity standpoint, that's our closest reference to
what's happening now.
Yeah, and what do Masai and Bobby do when there's a lot of outside pressure? And my kind of working theory with them is they like to operate with leverage. They don't sell low on their assets. And I think that's kind of how they roll, and they try and make long-term decisions. So yeah, if Trent, if OG, if Fred do get moved, I think there's a long-term goal there. I don't think they are moving Fred or Gary just because they're afraid they're not going to be able to re-sign them. I don't think they're moving OG just because he's not, getting up as many shots or being as involved in the offense as he might want to be. Like, I think they can resolve a lot of those things. To me, the Kyle thing is a really good example of how this front office operates. And I think any fans that are sort of stressed by the scenario, that's a good reference point.
Yeah, I mean, to the other side of that too. I mean, he was dealt later in the off season,
right? So there
he was a free
some truth to that.
Yeah. So, but also too, it's like we knew he was a free agent. We knew he was probably going to go to a more winning situation. So it certainly wasn't a surprise when that happened. At least not on my end. I didn't feel surprised by it at all.
No, and I think that's a really key point you brought up, because there was clearly some truth, right? I think Kyle probably wanted to be on a contender, was feeling that he wasn't going to resign, etc. But I also feel like Masai and Bobby weren't like, okay, you want to go? All right, we're shipping you to OKC. Mm-hmm. I think it was like, we're going to treat you right, and you treat us right. So we'll make sure we get the deal. And I remember saying a ton during that time. The rumored teams, it was the Lakers, like Taylor Horton Tucker was like, yeah, that's not real. But I think the Philly and Miami rumors probably had some truth to them. And I kind of narrowed it down to, wait a second, who's negotiating here? You have Pat Riley, Daryl Morey, and Masai. No deal's getting done. Because all of those GMs destroy other GMs. So True. They generally don't.
Them and Danny Ainge.
Yeah, right. So it's like, I feel like, where are the rumors coming from here, and are the front offices like have a lot of clout. So I'm sure, with Miami, it was like, okay, do you want Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero? And Masai's like, I told you I want Precious. And they're like, okay, see you in the summer.
Right. I mean, I think they were probably trying to get Precious and someone else who isn't Goran Dragic, but
Exactly. I'm sure Miami, I don't think they don't mess around either. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that they were like, I'm sure them giving up Precious was tough.
Right.
I'm sure that that's not something they wanted to do. And they probably told Masai, okay, well, you're going to lose Kyle then. And Masai's like, no, I'm not. And, summer hits, they do a sign and trade. And, they didn't, like, Kyle cooperated with the franchise. Like, he, there's a lot of mutual respect with Masai and Kyle. And can I say that is exactly the scenario with Gary and with Fred and with Masai? No. But my gut tells me that there's a lot of respect in this franchise.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And speaking of Fred, like, I do think Fred is someone that Masai would have some dialogue with, especially going into the off season. I don't see them not having a conversation. There are lots of rumors around Fred as well. Let's get into that. So Eric, is it Pincus?
Yep.
Yeah,
a
a
Bleacher
Bleacher
Report.
Report reported that the Clippers, of course, it's the Clippers, are interested in trading for Fred VanVleet. But they also said additionally the Lakers, the Miami Heat, which is hilarious, Minnesota, Dallas, Phoenix Suns, Washington Wizards, and the Orlando Magic are all interested in Fred.
Right.
Again, we understand why there's interest because Fred is Fred. Fred is great.
Yeah.
Even though he was, struggling for a bit there, it's like what I love about Fred is how much he just owned that and did everything he could to work through it. That's the most you could want out of your players when they are struggling. So I feel like I still bet on Fred, as he says, bet on himself, but I bet on him personally. I definitely haven't given up on him. Yeah, I mean the Clippers is pretty annoying. This story leads with their interest.
Yeah, apparently they want Kyle too, which is like, get out of here. It's like reports come out that the Clippers want OG, Siakam, Kyle, Fred. They're gonna keep Norm.
They're gonna bring back Gasol from
Europe.
They want
Gasol to come out of retirement. They're bringing back Serge. They're gonna see if they can get Nurse and Jeremy Lin as well.
Yeah,
it's like just... the Clippers thing is like, I don't know what to do, man. Like, leave us alone.
Yeah, it's pretty wild and obviously annoying and frustrating, but also like, okay, imagine a scenario where they did that and maybe, they win or they get really far. Wouldn't they look so stupid?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Maybe like, I don't know how it is like truly in America, like that they think like that they're so, I don't know. I don't even know the word that they just wouldn't care, that they just like slowly eroded away another team and then just built this thing. I mean, I don't even think Masai would let it happen, to be honest with you. Like, I don't even think he lets it happen. Like, I think he would just be like, I'm not going down with this ship. I just don't think he's doing it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think, Canadians and Torontonians, like we're used to this idea that a lot of the U.S. market, talks about us like we're a farm team. We develop players to be traded to other teams where they will then excel. And obviously Masai has changed that narrative, right? He came in with the whole believe in yourself, Toronto. And my joke is always that Toronto says, I won't, and I don't believe in myself, Masai. I'm desperately insecure. And Masai's like, I don't know what to say. We won once already, and we're going to win again. And everyone's just like, Masai, I know that you love me, but I don't love myself.
Well, as a city, we do have a bit of a complex for sure.
Big time.
Yeah.
The Toronto insecurity complex is deep.
Yeah, it is deep.
But yeah, Clippers aside, it's interesting to me that Fred is having this like disaster year, and all these competitive teams want him, right?
Yeah.
That says a lot to me. That says that those teams see a winning player, who would also, he'd be an unrestricted free agent for them as well, right? So they'd have to deal with his free agency, and if they really want him, that tells me they're probably interested in re-signing him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I don't really know what to make of this. I personally do not think Fred is going to get dealt at the trade deadline. I don't think the Raptors are going to do a huge swing like that, personally. But I do think in free agency, teams like the Mavericks could be a bit of a threat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the threats are real for Gary and for Fred. And I think that the Raptors are, we're coming off this great defensive performance for the, I guess the Sacramento Kings. But there's no way to, until the narratives completely change, unless the Raptors go on some massive winning streak, this team has absolutely underperformed expectations. Now, I think there's the fan view of that, and like let's tear it down, or let's make some dramatic trades and get some picks or whatever you want to do. And then there's the franchise view of that. Like, how do they view these individual assets? How do they view them working together? And I think it's been a complex year. There's a lot of talent on the roster, in my opinion. And there's been a lot of chemistry issues. There's been a lot of like role issues. And of course, there's been some performance issues, right? Like Fred has not shot as well as he has previously in his career. And that's, I think it's had a big effect on the team.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a really interesting deadline.
It's going to be a super interesting deadline. I think it will be very telling about, what the front office feels about this team, and not just us. Like, I think we'll finally get a proper window into exactly how they feel at this deadline. I mean, something I said on this show a few weeks ago did get a little bit of backlash for it, but I was like, we don't need to make any big trades to tank. Like, we're 12th in the East, and we could very easily keep this roster and stay there. No one wants to hear that, but it's kind of true, because we were 12th then when I said it almost a month ago, and we're 12th now. So
it's true though.
So it's just like, you don't have to take these big swings to tank. If your team tank, you could literally keep the talent that you have, be 12th, get a decent, you're not going to get Wemby. Like, you're not going to get the first pick, but you'll still have a decent pick. And then you can figure out your chemistry issues in the off season. I mean, I am curious to see if we're going to do something, or what we're going to do at this deadline. Like I said, I do think it'll be something, but I don't think it's going to be this huge blockbuster trade mid-season. I'd be very, very shocked if that came to be.
Yeah, me too. I feel like what we've seen from this front office is that they're very methodical, very patient, and they don't succumb to pressure. But also they will. We've seen that they will make a move, right?
Well, I think
they will swing big when they feel like they need to. But to your point about the tanking thing, you're just not competing with Charlotte, Detroit, San Antonio, or Houston.
Yeah,
period.
That's my point.
End of story. You're not getting in those percentage. Maybe you can creep to 7th or 6th. Maybe you can lose more than Washington or Orlando or whatever. But I think, to that end as well, I feel like Masai is fairly comfortable drafting, in the 10 to 15 range, if that's the scenario. And it's to me, it's more about, what are you learning from this roster? And, how are you comparing that data with last year? Like, are you looking at last year and being like, oh, here's why we overperformed? Or are you looking at this year's roster and you're saying, here's why we're underperforming? Like, here's why there's a lack of chemistry. Otto didn't play. Maybe they need to do more than just that. Maybe they need,
Well, the kind of trade that I could see us making is, similar to like the Norm Gary Trent Jr. trade, or even before that when we traded Valanciunas for Gasol, right? Like a trade like that I could see happening. We're hearing a lot about the chemistry issues, but we're not really hearing about who exactly. Like we saw the little scuffle with Thad and Scotty Barnes and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, if there was like a particular player or two that were really like toxic in the locker room, I do think Masai would move those players.
I think so too. And I think losing really sort of, especially with a lot of hyper competitive people and with big expectations. Like, I'll be the first to say I have a complete egg on my face with this season. I said the Raptors are going to be 3rd in the East with 54 wins. You other people told me, I don't know, that's a bit high. And I was like, no, we're a regular season juggernaut. I was wrong. Right. So I think I wasn't the only one that had big expectations for this
No,
team.
I don't, but I wouldn't even call that egg on your face. Like I remember a while ago, I was talking to Alex Wong, and he told me when he was predicting the Raptors being like really high in the standings. This isn't this year; it was last year when he was promoting his book cover story. He predicted they'd be fourth in the East, and I was like,
Right.
why would you predict them being fourth in the East? And he's like, honestly, because it's just more fun. It's just more fun to aim high. And I appreciated that perspective. And Freddie, I feel like you're similar in that way. So I don't consider egg fair. On your face because I think you enjoy aiming high for this team. And I'm sure a lot of our, Raptors fans and our listeners feel the same way. I mean, I predicted the Raptors would be sixth in the East, which is literally exactly where they ended up last year because I was like, we didn't really make any significant moves in the offseason. So I'm just going to predict that this team lands in the same spot. You know what I mean? And so, obviously I was wrong too, but I don't think anyone predicted we'd be 12th. Like, there's no one winning that on FanDuel or whatever,
Yeah, I hear you. And, I think, back to the sort of like which direction, what are we doing sort of thing. I think a big part of it is, having a team that's inconsistent is so unbelievably frustrating because, you want things to be linear as a fan. You want to be able to say, I know what this is. And I think there's just so many factors with this team. Obviously, injuries, chemistry, poor shooting, roster design, but also like development, right? It's if you told me at the beginning of the year, Otto's not going to play, Siakam's going to be injured for 10 games, and Precious is going to miss 23 games. I would say, oh, okay, hold on. I don't think I'm going to put them, I'm not going to put them in third, but you also have to, when you're projecting forward, you have to assume that the team's not going to be 100% healthy. So I'll probably, correct that a little bit next year. But yeah, it's there's a lot going on with this team, and I think the Vision 6-9 thing is also interesting, right? Because like, was it a full like this is the permanent strategy, or is it like Vision 6-9 is more about like accruing assets to trade at some point? It's a wild year. I can't say I know what's going to happen at the deadline, but yeah, I'm just trying to kind of go back to like, what do Masai and Bobby do? And I feel like they're methodical. So I wouldn't necessarily expect a big move.
Yeah, I agree. With that, Freddie, it's time for our Nick Nurse Hottie Highlight of the week. And this week, in one of Nick Nurse's pregame pressers, or I think this is a practice presser, the headline is begrudgingly reveals details of latest film session, which is hilarious because he tries to keep that stuff pretty tight-lipped, but he did reveal a little bit more about their defense. And then we played against Sacramento and had a great game, which is exciting because I'm hoping in this Thursday afternoon of optimism that this could potentially lead to some progress.
Yeah, I found it really interesting that they went over all this tape and just executed so well. Like I rewatched that Sacramento Kings third quarter, and sure, maybe it's like a matchup thing. Like Sacramento only beat us by 1 point. I think, about a month and a half ago. So maybe it's a matchup thing where Sabonis is not great at passing out of doubles or something, but they're red hot and it's the best offense in the NBA. They've been lighting that beam all year. And that third quarter was incredible. Like the performances all around were just amazing. And it was defensive. And I think that looked like the Raptors that a lot of people, myself included, expected to see.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of games in this stretch too, where it seems like the Raptors are like really rolling on offense, but they can't stop the other team. And like that, even it feels weird because, at some point the taps are going to get turned off and we'll struggle on offense. And the defense we're not going to frustrate other teams. So to see us frustrate the Kings at home was something else. And I mean, I don't think you can say it's any one player. I think the chemistry with Scotty and Fred has really been growing. But I really do feel like Precious gives this team so much on both ends. And back to the Vision 6-9 thing, I think he's a huge part of the overall identity of this team. And he just brings a lot to the table that is important, like the energy, the athleticism. And yeah, his past couple games have been just a delight.
I completely agree. He's really turned a corner just in this last week with the team, and it's been really exciting to see. Freddie, thank you so much again for joining me on this week's episode. Maybe one day in the summer we can find a dunk tank. We can celebrate the WNBA coming to Toronto. I'm not sure, but let everybody know what you're up to and where they can find you on the internets.
Yeah, you mentioned it before, but you can follow my my podcast also on Raptors Republic, Confederacy of Dunks at Dunks Podcasts, and yeah, Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Freddie Rivas and at Freddie Noel Rivas. And yeah, I'm out here. I'm doing shit.
Thanks again, and we'll chat soon.
Cool. Thanks, pal.
Bye.